Bagay digugba nga igsoon kay Kristo, mayong gabi, kaniyong tanan. Again, it is always very moving to see nga kanang nagatigom na kita, even though gradual lamang o small number, to resume our liturgical Eucharistic celebration. Sa atuhang mga igsoon, sa inyong mga panimalay, joining us via live streaming, especially ang atong mga lolo o lola, o ang atong mga young ones, mayong gabi ipod kaniyong tanan. Thank you for joining us. Brothers and sisters, kining Ebanghelyo, when it was proclaimed by the Lord to the people of Galilee, immediately, no-brainer, kuha nila sa atong expression, gets dayon sang iyang mga listeners. Sa atuha, after several centuries, and much more growing up in an urbanized setting, it will take some kind of really imagination and knowledge. Jesus is using an agricultural image to teach us important values in our spiritual life. Mind you, it is a reality that even in some parts of rural India today, if someone is your enemy, one of the threats that he could hurl to his opponent would be, andam ka lang because I will plant bad seeds in your field. Yes, and it was even codified in the Roman laws that it is punishable in ancient times. Karon, we don't give that threat, no? But you see, the context is this. We are talking about ang binhi nagibutang sang Ginoo sa yuta. So, isimplify naton ang summary sang Ebanghelyo. The sower, the divine sower, is of course our beloved God. The good seeds that will eventually become the wheat later on are the children of the kingdom of God. The sower of bad seeds is the evil one. And the fruit of that, later on, kanang sagbot, is what we call the children of the dark one. The end point, the harvest, is the judgment day, wherein the wheat will be separated and brought to the barn, and ang sagbot pagasunugon. Brothers and sisters, this is some kind of an eschatological teaching for the people listening to the Lord, and they immediately kuha nila ang implikasyon. Now, for you and for me, unsa man ang implikasyon for our modern day spiritual discipleship? Two things. What can we learn about God? And number two, what can we learn about our own selves and the response we need to give? With God, notice kanang in the middle of the growth, now the weeds were growing side by side with the wheat. Ang trigo ug ang sagbot side by side ang ilang pagtubo. Unsa man giingon sa mga workers, "Sir, aton silang i-pull out." And for those who have basic knowledge in gardening, this is very common. The weeding out para makatubo ang mga tanom ba? And this is normal, but it's different in the planting of wheat. Ngano man, there is a tricky part here that we need to be attentive. Ang sagbot, it's actually called in English tares, T-A-R-E-S. And it's resembling in an uncanny resemblance to the wheat when it is growing at the early stage. It is so hard to distinguish one from the other. So, bunglayon, another term for that. Sa Ilonggo, interesting, palay, ang weeds, palay. It's as if the double use of the word palay means it's as if parang daw palay man siya, pero dili siya tinuod nga palay. So, there is this difficulty in recognizing. Worse, if you pull out the weeds, you put at risk also killing the wheat. And so, the owner of the farm, a seasoned farmer, unsa ang iyang response? He told them, "No, do not do that. because you will pull out the good wheat as well when you pull out the seeds. Now, this seems to be an agricultural imagery, but any good and seasoned farmer will tell you this is the right intervention in this particular context. And this is a lesson to us all of God's mercy and love. Yes. Ang responsorial psalm kaa Nindot, ang Ginoo maayo o mapasayloon. The Lord is kind and merciful. Unsa man ang tendency nato sa mga masasamang damo? Dili ba? Kini siya masamang damo. He committed a crime. Kini nga babayi, hugaw kayo ang iya past, masamang damo. Kini nga tawo, suspected as an enemy of the state. Masamang damo, posible nga terrorist. Unsa ang reaction? The reaction is this, the tendency, pull out the weeds. Exterminate immediately. Kill them. The problem is, when you pull out the weeds, you will kill the innocent. You will kill the good as well. And a seasoned farmer knows this. This is not only sensibility, it's the patience of the farmer tending the fields, familiar with the seasons, patient with allowing growth. Unsa ang gidugang ang further instruction sang owner of the farm, let them grow together. I know, usahay, na ay duwa ka logic dinhi nga naga-clash. Pull out the weeds or let them grow. But notice the context is the wheat. And here, the farmer gives the most practical o right intervention. And it tells you and me, kung kita man sa atong kabuhi, when we commit mistakes, and is there anybody here o diha sa inyong panimalay nga wala naka-commit mistake or sala? Kung naa, raise your hand kay we will submit your name for canonization, no? Pero pag tanan kita makasasala man, and one moment in our lives, unsa man na ang reaction? Pull out lang and then exterminate. With God, the responsorial psalm is clear. Ang Dios maayo ug mapasayloon. Mao kini ang gahatag sa atong hope that when God allows us to grow even with our own weaknesses, then there is chance for reformation and conversion. Because the growth process takes time. Let them grow together. Mao kini. We learn about God through this parable, that God is kind and merciful. And the more we believe that, the more we respond with the commitment to strive to grow each day para kita mangin good wheat, dili sagbot. Number 2, ang implikasyon sa atuhang kaugalingon. Here's the thing. Kining question usahay sa Ebanghelyo would be, so kung ang wheat, sons or daughters of God, ang sagbot, sons of the darkness, when I look at myself on the mirror, what do I look like? Trigo or sagbot? Do I look like a wheat or a weed? Brothers and sisters, if we are attentive to our inner struggles, kining judgment day at the end is also something which we do constantly every day of our lives. You know the process, kung mag-grow, because again the tares, they call this also in English the bastard wheat. Very uncanny ang similarity. So you have to wait until harvest time. And after the threshing and the grains are released, it is usually the role of the women to separate the grain. Ug naay grayish color ang tares, ang sagbot nga seeds, ug kanang wheat rather, ug ang wheat medyo fuller siya ug lighter ang color. It's a painstaking process that they are, separated and then set aside. Of course, the good wheat are harvested and brought to the barn. The weeds are thrown away or burned. Notice the process of painstaking searching, sifting, and separation. The threshing, sifting, and separation. Thomas Green calls this discernment. Meaning, ang harvest at the end, before we stand before the throne of God in judgment, we need to cultivate our inner soil. Each day, let's learn to identify the weeds within us and the wheat within us. The wheat representing our capacity for good, the weeds kanang atong sinfulness, ang atong selfish attitudes, ang atong negativities. And slowly, the more we pick them, we separate and we choose to nurture the good and release the bad. When we do that, then the harvesting at the end is built on our own lifetime, whole lifetime process of struggling to be holy. Holiness here is never about perfection. It's striving towards perfection. It's striving to really allow the growth to happen as we see the good and the bad inside us. And allowing the grace of God to fortify the good and make that our foundation and make that our source of action each day. And so, brothers and sisters, this seems to be a very simple agricultural parable on planting of the seeds. But we learn two important things. Number one, when the farmer says, do not pull out the weeds because it will kill the wheat, we learn about the mercy and kindness of God. And because of that, we can grow more in terms of conversion and reformation. And second, the harvest means all of us will stand before judgment and account for our lives. But to arrive there, we need also discernment of what is good and bad inside us and to allow the good to grow. So that come harvest time before God, we can tell Him, we are not perfect, but we have striven to follow what is good, and we have tried our very best to love. When we do this, then we live out the good news today. So help us, God.